All right, welcome everyone. Our McKenzie Healthy Living class today is around Talking is Teaching. And I just want to give a shout out for the next Healthy Living class here at McKenzie, which is May 20th. It is the Fairy Garden Workshop, which Nina says is a high attended training. So feel free to register through the McKenzie website. I do believe that people will walk away with a fairy garden. So that'd be super cool. But today, like I said, I'm here to do our Talking is Teaching seminar. And make sure the technology works for me. Maybe not. It must have clicked off on me. Okay. Just to give you a little introduction of who I am, my name is Julia. I serve as the director for the Great Start Collaborative currently. Just to give you a little bit about me, I was born and raised in Sandusky. I graduated here from high school, went into early education, which was a great opportunity to come back and raise my family in the place that I work. So this is a picture of my kiddos and my husband there. But kind of about my professional background, I started out in a career at home visiting, so working with parents and their families in their home on education. And then I transitioned into preschool, so working a lot with like those 3- and 4-year-olds, getting ready to go into kindergarten, and then some work with professional development. Currently, I'm working, it's called Early Childhood Investment Corporation, doing some consulting with other states in their family development sector. So I just say all that to say it's been a really great opportunity to work with a lot of families and their young children. And what I'm going to talk about today is really just learning more about how kids are, how their brains are developed. And I was telling people who joined earlier, even if you don't have direct kids within your home, it's always just great to know about what kids do you come in contact that, either through like if you're a grandparent interacting heavily with your grandkids or just within your community. If you're in a church and you have kids that come to your church activities, it's always great to just learn how kids develop. So I'll see if my clicker is still being funky on me. But that's how you can reach me. There's my work cell, and we have a website and my email after today. Just to kind of give you a brief overview of what the Great Start Collaborative is, we have some really big tasks that we're charged with, making sure that everyone in Sanilac County has a healthy birth and babies are born healthy. We also really focus on every child being developmentally on track. So are they walking, talking, building those relationships with peers, all those types of things up until we really focus on like the years up until kindergarten. Another big thing too is that reading law that we talk a lot about is having kids be reading by the age of 3rd grade. So like I said, big task for us to really think about, and the collaborative is really where all community partners come together to work on those things. So our first activity is to, what I'm hoping here is that we can just take a brief moment to enter into a child's mind. What's kind of going on in there? And so to start us off, I would like everyone just to, if you have a piece of paper or pen, and maybe Nina can supply you with some stuff back there. My question is, can you draw a bike? So I'll give you just a couple moments to, in your mind, what does a bike look like? And I have paper up here too.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. So yes, give your best shot at what you think a bike looks like. And I don't have a picture for you until the next slide. Oh. It is, yeah. And those joining us on Zoom, feel free to do this activity at home. Just need a piece of paper and a pencil and how you think a bike looks.
Say, oh, that's gonna be detailed. No. No. Whoa. It would be better with color frames, right? Nobody wants.
Maybe I can use it from here, Nina. Can I click it from here? All right, go ahead and finish up your last little sketch there. For those of you who have attempted to teach someone how to ride a bike, what are some things that you would say to a child when you're trying to teach them how to ride a bike? What are some language that you have? Just when they're like beginning.
You're gonna sit on the seat, keep your feet flat,
Yep.
safety.
How would you kind of get them in the thought of like the motion of the bike, how to like actually get it to go forward?
You gotta move your feet.
You got to put your feet on the pedals. Right.
Rotate fast.
There's a lot that I think what I'm talking, kind of like referencing here is that there's a lot that goes into learning a big task like riding a bike. And this is also transferable into any life skills that we're trying to teach our child, that it takes a lot of like direction, giving them very specific instructions, having them try it, right? Have them like try to figure it out themselves before we intervene. What was else was I going to name here? Let's talk about what our bikes look like. So I have a picture here. My first question is, who had spokes on their wheels? Yeah, it's everybody. Look at that. What did you start drawing first, if you can remember? The wheel. That's where I started too.
The easiest part.
Circle. Got it. Who, I was gonna say, who on their bike put like the mechanism of the gears and then the chain to move the gears forward?
No, I put a pedal.
I didn't even put pedals either, or a seat.
I put a seat, and I put the bars.
That's actually the most common thing that's missing when I do this activity with people is that not many people put the gears on there. Yeah. Anything else that you added? Handlebars, brakes. The other thing that I want to name just in this activity is think about the kids that you're around. Each of them have a different interpretation of what a bike looks like. And so I'm curious if you go home and if you have kids that you're interfacing with just tonight, have them draw a bike and have them explain to you, how does the bike go? Because it'll be so different from what we perceive as their caregiver or parent. And it's just interesting to hear how a child understands what that looks like.
Is it a tricycle to them?
Right. Yeah.
Or a scooter.
Right. What do they ride on? Yeah, that's so true. Is it the clicker? Okay, thanks, Dina. The other thought too here that I wanted to name in this activity is when we go to teach our child something. So say we have a couple of children at home or that we are, having a relationship with. Each of them are learning it differently. So even like when you're thinking about like having directions of how to ride a bike, for example, kind of tailoring it to what that child is ready to receive, right? If you tell a child your bike has to be pink and they think their bike should be purple, right? Yeah. There could create some just like, not that it's unnecessary, but some unnecessary like contention between like the person who's trying to teach a child and the child, right? And so a lot of times I'll say with kids that I'm working with, like, how do you see this going? Or what do you want to start with first? So then that can kind of like set the stage of where we should go. Instead of me saying like, put the wheels on there, put the spokes on there. They might not even not know what those things are. Any questions? Thanks for participating. I think I love this activity because it just really gives us a chance to like, let's go into our children's brains and see how that they're really functioning. Just a couple of pieces I think that are really important when we talk about brain development so there's a person called Dr. Becky Bailey, Conscious Discipline. You can look her up. She's got a lot of information, but she's talking about these 3 types of brains that we have. And so if you start over here with the left side, it's the red portion of the picture. It's called survival state. So these are like your basic functions of breathing, your heart rate, like your metabolic functions are like your basic needs of your brain. And then what's most critical in my mind is the emotional state, which is we call it the midbrain. And that's that blue picture right there in the middle. So a lot of times I'll hear, well, we don't really talk about emotions at home, just because I don't think that they're ready for it as a young child. But here's what I think the science is really showing us is that it's a critical part of their brain structure to have that emotional regulation. And of course, as adults, we have to help teach them those skills. They don't like come already ingrained in them. But what also is key about this picture and what Dr. Becky Bailey talks a lot about is in order to get to what they call the executive function, which is that green spot of their brain, they first have to make it all the way up there. And what I mean by that is they first have to have all of their basic needs met, all of their like heart rate regulated, all of those types of things. And then they also have to have emotional regulation in order to get to that executive function, the green space in their brain. I'm going to pause. Any questions? That was a lot of like science. Let me think of what else I wanted to say. So a lot of times I think, when I hear about kids having behaviors in preschool or school, I'm always thinking about how do we get them to that executive function in their brain? And really that functioning brain, we all know, doesn't develop until later on in life. And so they really are like trying to test things out with their emotions. They kind of are leading a lot of times at a very young age with emotion. I have 2 twins at home, like most of you know. And so that's how they're kind of like interacting. They're crying to let me know that they need something because they don't have that like executive function yet to tell me what's wrong. So, and you can kind of like, the other thing I would point out here too is, so like the survival state, this is like primal way of humans being in the world, is we need that like fight or flight, they call it. So if a bear is attacking you, you don't have to like consciously think to run. Your brain is just like telling you to run. So it's a very important piece to the puzzle. Another research that I just wanted to share, and you can always look these people up online, is Dr. Mary Ainsworth. This is a really interesting, and I have a video right after this slide. She's talking about, and what I think is super key about early childhood education is that relationship that we have with those kids. And so Dr. Mary Ainsworth did a research study on 4 different types of secure attachment, okay? And actually I shouldn't say secure because that's one of them, but just attachment styles. So what she did, just to give you the cliff notes, is she put a child and their parent in a room, and they were video cameraing, obviously. And then they had the parent leave the room. And so, and it's a very small child. So the child's like kind of looking around like, where is my parent? And then what Dr. Mary Ainsworth did is had the parent re-enter the room and see how that child reacted to the parent re-entering the room, which is just like, to me, so interesting. And so she kind of come up with these 4 different ways of this attachment. So we have secure attachment. So when that caregiver entered the room, the child like went to that person for comfort and was like, oh yes, you're back. I'm so happy. Then we have this anxious attachment, which is, the child had a hard time like regulating themselves even after the parent re-entered the room. And then we have dismissive. So this is maybe the child who, when the parent re-enters the room, doesn't really mind. Like they were fine with the parent being there or not. So just interesting stuff. And then avoidant is kind of basically what it's saying is the child kind of avoids when the caregiver comes back and they don't even really notice. Any questions or thoughts with that? I'll pause. That was a lot of, again, research. I think what I'm thinking about is a lot of times kids can show up in different types of attachment. It can be very based on like what situations they've been a part of, what kind of like stressors have been going on in their life. They can be feeling anxious with like just different things that can happen in the home. But I think this is just really important, thinking about us as caregivers and that relationship that we build with our children. If you think about it and there's like lack of relationship with the children, it's harder for them to learn with us, right? We really have to have that bonding piece. So, all right, I'll move on. Okay, I have a video here talking about regulation. I'm like a nerd about this stuff. I really am so interested in like how this research shows up in spaces and how kids are kind of like learning in the spaces that we're in with them. So in this video, you are going to see, you can kind of see up here in the corner, the testers, and then you have the caregiver and baby. And what they're going to show you here is like tension in a room and how babies feel about that. Okay, so this tester is going to give the baby like a task to do. I think it's like putting a top on a box. And then they're gonna have like an agitator come into the room and see how that baby responds. Okay, so it's a quick video. It's only like 1 minute. Oh, what'd I do? 1 moment. Okay, there we go. If you can't hear the teachers trying to just let him explore what's in the box. You can't see it. She's showing him a new task of putting the beads in a cup. And then they have the agitator entering the room, which you can see baby notices really quickly.
That's aggravating. That's so annoying.
See baby kind of looking at.
That's your opinion. It's aggravating.
They're very observant. He's kind of looking for, yeah, what's happening here? You kind of sometimes feel bad for the baby, you know, he doesn't know what's going on.
He's about ready to cry.
Yeah. So that research was just kind of showing, I think a couple of things come to mind for me is how other people can influence a child's learning. Environment can so influence how a child is learning. Any other thoughts that's popping up for you as you're watching that? I think the other thing too is, like I said during the video, the baby's super respondent. If you really look, you know, babies, I would say this child's under 2 years old. The things that I notice about the body language is he seems secure with the caregiver. You know, he's ready to learn. He's not like dysregulated with that person. So that's a strong pillar. The other thing too is like reading that baby's face. I mean, we could tell it right here. He's like looking to the agitator, back at the teacher. He's like, what is going on? And not that a lot of times I'll hear in the community, well, my baby doesn't really know that's what's going on. And I'm like, they have a lot of like internal systems. Yeah, you know, they're really kind of like observers of the people that they're interacting with. So anything else there? I was curious, the thought that I've watched this video a couple times now, but I didn't see the child like turn to the caregiver for comfort, which is just interesting to me. Like, I wonder what that child's thinking of, like how to regulate himself.
He was very calm.
He was, yeah.
I know a whole lot of kids that would have sat there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She was very vocal when she came back, when she came on.
Right. That's an interesting point. I'm glad you brought that up because I think personality has a lot to do with it too. You can have a child who's just like a little bit more hyper and hard to like sit down and do things with. Yeah. Um,
And if he's content with mom and dad, and all of a sudden somebody came in raising their voice, he just kind of shut down.
right. And clearly he could do the task, right? He showed us with the box that he was capable of doing those tasks. And so sometimes I think too, when you're thinking about, I'm just using an example of like in the classroom in a preschool setting, say you have a child who doesn't want to write their letter or write the number. I always wonder like what's happening around them, right? Not that they're like being defiant to not want to do that letter. But that they just like need some like regulation skills. And I would say us as caregivers or us as teachers, we can help them do that, right? We can help them, but it takes a lot of like observation, learning the child a little bit better, all those types of things. So, any other thoughts on that? I like that video. Okay. The other part here is, I call them types of play, which I think is just important. I don't think people think about this in the general public of how kids show up in spaces with their peers. And so this has 6 different types of play that you might see your child being a part of when you're observing them. So I'll just read them here: unoccupied, solitary, onlooker, parallel, associative, and cooperative. So let me just say, let me start off with cooperative takes a long time. This cooperative play is like, here's a block for you. I'm going to take it back from you. Here's a crayon. Do you want to share the crayons that I have? That takes a lot of intervention. I'm sure all of us in this room have played a board game with children. And usually I know at my house, someone ends up crying. So most of the time me. And then we have, I'll kind of go back in the like order here. Associative play would be like they're both riding a bike. So they're kind of like both learning from each other, but they're not like teaching each other or having to like interact. They have like their own supplies of stuff. But they'll maybe say like, hey, you're going too fast. Like that's associative play, just in a different form. And then we have parallel play, which you can see the picture there is they're both doing pictures and really not paying attention to one another at all. They're just parallels like side by side. The kids are side by side doing an activity together. Still very important. Like this happens all the time in preschool settings or even like earlier than that. Kids are playing, they may like hear another child behind them. I always kind of picture this as like, what if a child started kindergarten and had no like social interactions before that? We would know that that would be a deficit, right? Like if they had no time with other kids and then they entered, we threw them into kindergarten with a bunch of other kids. A lot of things happen prior to that kindergarten door. And then onlooker, I see this a lot of times, and like I said, I have twins at home who are 2. They'll just like be watching what other people are doing. They're not necessarily playing with them. But again, that's a lot of learning happening. They're like visually trying to understand how people relate in the world. And then solitary is kind of self-explanatory, but just saying that they play with a toy by themselves. And unoccupied is they have no purpose. They're just kind of like bebopping around the room. They don't have a focus of what's going on. Have anybody seen, can you relate to any of this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Board games, for sure. Bring that back up. I would say, you know, honestly, board games is probably like one of the like cheaper routes of building that cooperation. Cheaper, and you can like do it pretty often. It doesn't cost a lot of money. Just offering the opportunity to, I'm trying to think of like another way to like build cooperative skills. Board games comes to mind. Puzzles. Yeah.
At the park.
At the park. Yeah, give an opportunity. I would say some key things here too. Again, going back to that like brain structure that Dr. Becky Bailey was talking about. Kids don't come ingrained knowing how to share. We have to show them. And so a lot of times what I'll say to, and I've heard other parents use as well, is like the parent will be the turn taker. Okay, it's my turn. Now I'm going to give it to you, so it's your turn. So you're like building those skills with them. I'm curious if anybody else has tools that they've used. as far as how to build those like cooperative play skills. Ooh, yeah, that's a good one. Kids like to know like what to expect of them. And yeah, I think a timer, a lot of schools use that too. Like in 10 minutes, we are going to transition to going wherever X, Y, and Z we have to go. Just like us adults, we're like habitual creatures. We like habit. We like to know what to expect. So do kids. And a lot of times I have a 9-year-old who wants like the full daily schedule. And she wants to know like when things are happening and when she can go to Walmart is her favorite spot to be. And so I think it's just like her way of like, she's trying to understand like what is expected of me, what are the timelines, those types of things. Anything else? Okay, I'm kind of shifting here in the presentation. Check my time. This is just a really great brain scan of when a baby is first born. So over there on the left of the screen is when a baby is first born. They're called neurotransmitters. So it's just like those electrical happenings in the brain. You can see that it's far and few between at birth. And then by the age of 6 years old, they have a ton. This is like the biggest part of the brain that's developing is from birth to age 6. Our brain, like just in like basic size, is growing a lot. And then all those neurotransmitters are in there, like making connections. Those types of things are happening. And then you can kind of see in this brain scan at 14 years old, there are less neurons. But what they say about that is that the neurons are just becoming more efficient. Like you kind of like have pathways set and your brain's just becoming like it's becoming smarter. So, but that's why I was given the opportunity to talk here at McKenzie today is just to kind of share that how important those early years are and how we as like community members can really impact kids in that age range. And so we've done a campaign with the Great Start Collaborative. It's called Talking is Teaching. And it looks different in different communities. The whole state of Michigan was really working on this campaign, but these are like the prompts that Talking is Teaching houses for us. And it's really just giving like community members ways to talk with kids. And so this one right here, it says, let's talk about sports. And this can happen, when you're on the drive home from school. It doesn't have to be like anything formalized, but just kind of like learning more about how the kids, how their day went, what are they thinking about. So some of the prompts they have here are, what are some ways that we can move our body? Again, going back to that like drawing of the bike and what they want to start out with. What's your favorite sports? Which ball is the biggest or the smallest? A lot of times we think like babies don't talk. And so do we need to talk to them? But it really starts out at that, like when the baby's born. And then there's another, it's called like the Talking is Teaching prompts about family. So there's some prompts on there too. So some of them are like, let's create a family tree together, talking about aunts and uncles, grandparents, those types of things. We try to get these in like common places like parks and stuff. I remember one time we had a summer picnic, I think it was at the Lexington Park, and we had one of these prompts there. And so as I think it was her grandma, was pushing her on the swing, she was asking those questions from the prompt. So it was just like a way of like, sometimes even myself, I'm like, I don't know what to talk about the kids. My brain is like halfway offline by the end of the night. And so these are kind of nice. Lots more of Talking is Teaching prompts that are available too. I'm going to just shift a little bit. I think it's important when I do have a platform like this to talk about some of like the data of what Sanilac County's like birth to 5 system looks like. So I have a couple of slides here on data. This one is showing how many births that we've had in Sanilac County. And this data is coming from, oh my gosh, I can't think of it. I think it's called Early Childhood Count or something like that. I got the website there listed if you're interested. But just showing how many births that we've had in Sanilac County. And then I have the 2 counties that surround us, Huron and St. Clair County. So if you can kind of see here in the year of 2022, which data sometimes takes a while to catch up to us, there was about 400 births compared to St. Clair County, which there was 1,400 births. So pretty big difference in population there. But I think that's an important data point. I got a couple other ones here. This one's interesting. It's talking about how many women are able to access prenatal care up until the baby is born. And as most of you know, we have just not a lot of access to OBGYNs in our county. We're always working on that. I know Mackenzie's always working on that too. But just kind of like the current status of that. So this data is showing people who are pregnant less than adequate prenatal care, which we sit at about 30%. So 30% of our 400 births are not receiving the full gamut of prenatal care. Anything surprise you guys with the data? It's probably hard to see from back there. Looks like we're leading though in the region. Like the state of Michigan, prenatal care access is only at 31%. So something we, again, when talking about those like outcomes that we're working at with the collaborative, this is something that we talk heavily about in those meetings of how to create more access for families. This is another data point I think it's important. How many households in Sanilac County are living at the ALICE threshold, which I have to read it off here, but it's asset limited, income constrained, and employment. So people kind of like living paycheck to paycheck, as I think was what I think of in our county. And we sit at 43%, which I thought was interesting. St. Clair County sits at 41% and Huron County sits at 43%. So we're kind of very similar to Huron County. And I just say that to say, when we talk about like access to like preschool enrollment, which I think is the next slide, really thinking about like the high cost of that. Childcare is pretty high cost as far as getting kids, again, like that birth to 5 age range that we work with at the collaborative, access to services. I think the average cost of childcare right now is about $11,000 a year, which is pretty substantial, especially when you're first starting out raising young kids, a pretty substantial amount. And then, yeah, like I said, this is the next slide of how many kids do we have in preschool in Sanilac County. This is something we really working hard to improve. We have 65% of children not in preschool in Sanilac County, which we said like I don't know how to say it any better, but we're the worst in the region of how many kids are going to preschool. And just because I have the opportunity to speak about it, we do have options for preschool in our area. And so feel free to reach out to me through the intermediate school district. There are like Great Start Readiness program, which I think a lot of people know about, Head Start programs, and then of course, like all of the childcare centers offering different options as well. I think a lot of times I hear, and I'd be curious to what you guys have to say, like when I meet parents, that they never knew that these options were available, that their kids could go to preschool, at 3 years old. Do you guys have any comments on that? What do you hear from our community on like services available to birth to 5 people?
Now, would that age 3 to 4 run into the problem with the child not being potty trained?
Some programs, not usually. Yep.
Some don't, I understand.
Yep. I agreed with you. I think it's getting better. I remember when I had my son who's 11, that was like a thing. You couldn't go to preschool unless you were potty trained. But I think they're trying to like ease up on that requirement a little bit.
That is the tough one, especially in that age.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's a hard one to, and I think teachers too are willing to work on that as well. They know it's a part of like the development of that young of age, for sure. Any other thoughts? I always love the opportunity to like shout this stuff out from the rooftop. So again, I would love to have more conversations with anybody who's watching too. And then just to wrap us up today, I wanted to give an opportunity of some things that we have going on. So really a part of the collaborative, when I think about the birth to 5 age range is putting on events that are family friendly, free, and activities that are coming up, or activities that the kids can do at these events. So in partnership with the Sandusky Chamber of Commerce, we're hosting a kids event at the end of June. This will be City Hall downtown. And just a shout out, we'll have Bluey there, which I think will be super cool. And just a bunch of other stuff going on in our community. I have a couple more too that were happening. We just officially, I want to go to the next one real quick. We did just officially launch the summer picnic as well, which will be happening on July 15th. It's a Wednesday during the day at the Brown City Park. This is something that we've done annually. Just again, like creating some opportunity for reading time during the summer. So we did partner with a couple people, a couple organizations in Brown City to host this event. Yeah, just wanted to make sure everyone knew about it. And then I'll go back one too, because this is another important one. We host what are called parent cafes, which the title is kind of misleading. There's actually not coffee served at the parent cafe, which people ask a lot about. But really, the parent cafes are a space for parents to come together to talk about wins and challenges within parenting. We hear that a lot from parents, that they just want to be supported by one another. And so these parent cafes are really that model to do that. So we provide dinner. We do have childcare, so you can bring the kids with you, but then parents go into a separate space to have that community conversation. So the next one will be coming up here May 6th at Brown City again. And all of this information lives on the sanilacgreatstart.org website. So you can RSVP and get notification on that.
Julia,
Yeah,
does that location change every time?
it does. Yeah. Yeah, we really try. So that's a good question. As a collaborative, we are countywide. So we try to hit all of the towns. So we are trying to bebop around, which I've heard from community members, it's hard to follow where we're going to be at. But we really try to bring it to each community in any best way we can. But yeah, the parent cafes we try to host quarterly. So once every 3 months. And actually I was doing some parent cafes too, even at the local jail, which is so interesting to hear how people support one another in those kind of environments too. Any other questions? I just wanted to, this is my last slide here, how you can connect with the Great Start Collaborative. We have a newsletter. We also have an e-newsletter through MailChimp, and Facebook we're pretty active on Facebook still. And then I just have my survey. And that's everything. Any questions?
Thank you, Julia.
Yes.
I appreciate the time. I don't have any questions on the Q&A or the chat right now from our participants, but
Great.
we really appreciate your time, and thank you.
Yeah.